The first of Jesus' grandmothers that we meet is Tamar. Her story is not very well known, but plays an important role in understanding the genealogy of Jesus. Located in Genesis chapter 38, her story is contained in this one chapter. It's part of the longer Joseph narrative. In Genesis 37, Judah is the brother of Joseph who says, "Oh, let's don't kill Joseph. Let's just sell him into slavery." So by the end of chapter 37, that's where we find Joseph, sold into slavery. His story takes a pause there. In chapter 38, we pick up Judah's story. Judah goes to a new land, gets married, and quickly has 3 children. The oldest son is and he marries Tamar, but soon dies. As was the custom, Tamar then marries the next son, but he too quickly dies. Judah is pretty concerned that Tamar must be responsible for the death of his 2 sons, so he does not have his youngest son marry Tamar, as was right and expected. In a world where women were valued either as virgins, or as wives, or as mothers, Tamar now has no voice, no power. She is none of these things, and so is considered no value of society. But Tamar will not be cast aside that easily. Through some trickery and sexual deception, Tamar takes matters into her own hands and becomes pregnant by Judah. Yeah, her father-in-law. Judah is the one with all the power and the voice and the might. And when he hears that Tamar is pregnant, not by his youngest son, he sets out to have her killed, as was his right. But upon finding out that he is the father of Tamar's baby, he declares, "She is more righteous than I." Tamar has twin boys, one of whom is a direct descendant of Jesus. Now remember, this isn't too many generations after the covenant that God made with Abraham. God promised Abraham that his descendants would be more numerous than the stars. Judah is well aware of this promise, but stands in the way of its fulfillment by not having his youngest son marry Tamar and have an heir. Tamar will have none of this. She does what needs to be done to make sure there is an heir, to make sure that she is part of God's plan and God's unfolding story. While we don't condone prostitution or sexual trickery, even Judah recognizes that what Tamar did was right. She is called righteous. The Hebrew even says holy because of what she did. This should call to mind some of the ways that Jesus reinvented the rules of justice and righteousness. For Jesus, righteousness was not about being good, but about seeking wholeness and justice for all of God's people. Judah thought only of himself and of his son, but Tamar wanted a voice for the voiceless. She wanted to be a part of God's plan for the whole community. Jesus picks up this way of thinking and reminds us that we are siblings with one another, deeply connected to the stranger and the vulnerable. Tamar is just the first of some amazing women that we will meet this year as we continue to understand Jesus' grandmothers. Peace, friends.